Thank you, Tina. All right, welcome everybody. We're gonna get started here. Thank you all for joining. Cindy, can I ask you to read our opening statements? This meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, with the annual notice advertised in the January Trenton Times. Notice was provided to the Hunterdon County Democrat, the Trenton Times, members on the listserv, to department heads, the city attorney, and city engineer. And the meeting was posted on the bulletin board at City Hall, the glass doors on the elevator entrance, and to the city's website at www.lambertvillenj.org. The meeting agenda provides for action items as at the extent known at the time of publication, and this meeting will be recorded using the Zoom meeting platform. Would you like a roll call, Mayor? Councilwoman Lambert?
Here.
Councilman Sanders?
Here.
Councilman Stegman?
Here.
Council President Taylor?
Here.
Mayor Fall?
Here. Can we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I ask everyone to remain standing for a moment of silence for those who are fighting in our nation's armed forces at home and abroad, and those who are fighting on the COVID-19 pandemic front lines. Thank you.
Okay, everybody, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the, oh, actually, Mayor, did you want to discuss the 2-minute time?
Yeah, we can discuss that when we get closer to the two ordinance second readings.
Okay, going to ask for a motion to approve the meeting minutes as listed on the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, do you want a roll call or all in favor?
Roll call.
Councilwoman Lambert?
Yes.
Councilman Sanders?
Yes.
Councilman Stegman?
Yes.
Council President Taylor?
Yes.
Mayor Fall?
Yes.
Okay, the next one is a proclamation on the agenda for Arbor Day. So can we have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second.
Doing all in favor on that?
Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Now we have we have a consent agenda, but we also have the resolution on the agenda for the transfer of the liquor license for Deanna's. The closing is scheduled for 10 a.m. tomorrow. So this has to be done as a public hearing, correct, Bill?
Yes.
Okay, so first I'd like to ask if there are any comments from the council.
I'm sorry, can we do the consent agenda first and then move the liquor license to after the consent agenda?
Sure, absolutely. Do we have any questions or comments on the consent agenda? And that would be resolution number 63 through 72.
If I could just make a note on resolution number 71. It's a resolution calling on the governor, our U.S. senators, Congressman Malinowski, to encourage the Biden administration to reverse support of the Penny's Pipeline's use of eminent domain, to oppose the Penny's project, and to support HR 2115, which is sponsored by Bonnie Watson-Coleman and Tom Malinowski. Just by way of background, this is something that the Pipeline Committee has met on and looked at and approved. So I'm happy to answer any questions that folks have. I just wanted to call out that resolution though.
Yeah, I'd just like to take a second, Councilman. Thank you. I know you've been sitting on the Pennies Pipeline Committee for several years, and it's exciting to see that there's some motion from our Democratic delegation in Congress in support of reversing the FERC decision and making sure that we're not losing land to an unnecessary pipeline. So thank you for all of your work on that and the whole committee's work on the ongoing opposition.
Yeah, it's team effort, and folks have been contributing a lot of time and effort. So everyone's contributions have been appreciated.
Okay, so can we have a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Councilwoman Lambert,
Yes.
Councilman Sanders,
Yes.
Councilman Stegman,
Yes.
Council President Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Fall.
Yes.
Great. Move back to Deanna's the transfer. Okay. Okay, so this is a liquor license transfer going from Deanna's to, sorry guys, I just lost my place.
Taverna 54.
Yep, Taverna 54 LLC. Closing takes place tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. So we have to approve this prior to the closing. Everybody has been fingerprinted. We have all of the paperwork necessary to process it. So do we have any council questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Tina, what we have to do is open it up for any public questions or comments. Okay, I don't see any.
I see one hand up, actually.
All right,
So Sean, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Hello, can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, great. Is this the first public comment for the entire agenda?
No, this
It's
is
just regarding the liquor license transfer.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
okay. All right, hearing no comments from the council or from the public, can we have a motion to authorize?
So moved.
Do we have a
Second.
Great. Okay, Councilwoman Lambert,
Yes.
Councilman Sanders,
Yes.
Councilman Stegman,
Yes.
Council President Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Fall.
Yes.
Great, thank you, everybody. We'll move on to the ordinances. First, I just want to note that we are moving two of the ordinances to the May 4th work session. One is for the floodplain management and the other is for building and housing. So we only have the ordinances on for second reading tonight and the public hearing. The first one is ordinance number 5. It's a bond ordinance to reappropriate balances in the bond accounts for the purpose of funding engineering for the 2021 road projects. This is not incurring new debt. It is instead taking balances in old bond ordinances and combining them so that we can spend it on the engineering for the 2021 project. So with that, I'd like to open the public hearing for 05-2021 and ask if there are any council comments. Okay, hearing no council comments, Tina will open it up for any public comments, and this is only on bond ordinance number 05-2021. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised. Can we move on and ask for a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, can we have a voice vote for this? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Great. Then we'll need a motion now to approve and adopt this ordinance on second reading. Can we have a motion for that, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, this has to be a roll call. Councilwoman Lambert,
Yes.
Councilman Sanders,
Yes.
Councilman Stegman,
Yes.
Council President Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Fall.
Yes.
Great, thank you, guys. Now we're moving on to ordinance number 6. It's an ordinance to amend the Lambertville City Code 2014, Chapter 3, Human Rights Council, amending the requirements for membership. This amends the police director by adding officer in charge. The police director is already on there, so it just adds officer in charge. And also for the members of the public, it removes residency requirements and adds a member of the student body at South Hunterdon School District. So now, having said that, we'll open the public hearing for ordinance number 06-2021. Does the governing body have any comments on this?
Yes, I just want to remind folks that these requests were made by the Human Rights Commission. They worked with members of that commission to make these edits so that they can continue to build a stronger partnership and membership amongst their group, so that they have a full body outreach to our community as they start to tackle some of the broadened scope of issues that they're going to be working on over the next several years.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Councilman Lambert?
Just to clarify, what we're voting on tonight is simply the change in the language to the ordinance. There are no names attached to this, so we're not approving any membership, correct?
Correct. There is no appointment no new appointments that we're making this evening.
Okay, so I'm not clear if there are people who were going to be rolling over into this, like, because one individual was a resident, moved out of the out of the community, and now is eligible. Will we have to reapprove that individual, or will that person remain on the council? I'm not clear on that.
I guess it would depend on whether or not they resigned when they moved out from the community, but it's only the members that we have appointed as of January of this year.
Okay, so we would need guidance from the Human Rights Council as to whether or not that individual resigned and is I guess.
When people resign, they usually resign through the city clerk. I'm not sure exactly who you're describing here.
Well, okay. Well, I'll be more as specific as I can because I don't know the names of people involved. I had just heard anecdotally that there was an individual who resigned, who moved out of the community, out of Lambertville, and steps were taken to put forward this amendment to make this individual continue their eligibility. And I just am questioning whether or not we have to reapprove that or not. That's all.
He did not resign. I have not received any resignation.
Okay, so it's kind of a carryover. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I mean, the residency requirement was never enforced. I'm just very confused by your question, Councilwoman. I'm sorry. And maybe if
Mayor, I think she was just asking if the person in question, if we have to reappoint that person. I think the answer is no. The person never resigned. We're clarifying the ordinance here just to make sure there's no issue moving forward. I think, unless Bill tells me I'm wrong, I think that's what we understand right now.
Yeah, when people have moved out of the community before and continued serving on boards, we've never enforced this residency requirement on any of our boards in previous years.
Okay, but I was just clarifying. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Stegman?
I have a suggestion that we perhaps consider making, although not a Lambertville resident, making them in the sending district, if they live in the sending district for the school system. At least that way we know we have a person who has a connection to the city other than just being on this particular board. And how that, is that feasible? Would it work? I don't want to exclude anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think
if
the goal with the residency requirement was so that the board could choose folks within, choose folks that they felt were strong contributing members regardless of their residency. I would say, particularly because we're on the second reading of this ordinance, that may constitute a significant change. I'd have to ask Bill. But this ordinance has already been read into first reading. So I would say that making that edit would not be appropriate at this time.
Well, could we hear from Bill? Because
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be a significant change. I mean, we can always, we can put up a new ordinance, but by adding that tonight, I
Okay.
think we would have to go through the process again.
I'm fine with it. We can.
If there's just an amendment you can submit it to Cindy and, I'll take a look and maybe it can, maybe it's something to consider for a future meeting.
That's fine.
I'm fine with this ordinance as is, but it has raised an interesting question that we might want to look at, which is that our ordinances governing membership for our boards and commissions are not consistent. And they may not all necessarily need to be the same. I think there are some legitimate reasons why certain boards we might want to restrict to residents only, and certain boards that make sense to have a more regional approach if there are, significantly contributing members. So again, not suggesting any changes to this, but it may be something we want to consider a little more holistically.
This is, if I could, to I think it's a good suggestion, I do think that a more comprehensive view of this is probably a good idea. So I think we should support. I'm going to support this as is. We can't make a change now, but to look at all of our eligibility criteria, I think is probably a good idea. We certainly have a lot of elements of our code that are probably out of date that need review. This is one of them. And I think we should, I agree, we should take a look at this together. It may be that we need no changes, it may be some changes. But we talked about this in terms of in the last meeting about this residency requirement. And we were kind of narrowly focused on the issue of this particular board. So I do think a further dialogue around it is a good idea.
Well, I will sort of take a moment here to shout out former council president Beth Acero. She was extremely helpful to us in terms of really opening up our nominating process and making sure that it was more, publicly forward facing, that we got more volunteers. We increased the number of people who were interested in volunteering year over year. Now that she's no longer on council, we do need another council member to sort of take over that work. And my recommendation is, rather than waiting until September to start that nomination process, that as a part of that nomination process, we look more holistically at each of the governing ordinances for those commissions and committees and do that as a first step prior to our appointments. And so, I guess I'll ask here, outside of, my volunteerism on that effort, who else would like to take over Council President Sarah's work and continue working towards the nominating process?
So this would be looking at the nominating process as it's documented now?
No, it would be being the leader on the appointments process for each of the committees, commissions, and boards. And as a part of that leadership, looking at each of the ordinances with me and our council with an SEL, and addressing what may be inconsistencies amongst those ordinances.
I can do that.
Okay, so I'm looking forward to working with you on that. So the first phase that we'll work on for this will be addressing what those inconsistencies are. And then between now and November, you'll help me appoint the 20 or some odd folks who are going to be ending our committees, commissions, and boards.
Okay.
Great. Okay. All right, so we can start working on that, I think, as soon as we're a little farther along in the swing of a couple of the other major projects that we have. But let's check back in with the council on where we've gotten on that by our working session in July. Does that sound fair?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so should we open up for public comment on this ordinance?
Great. We have Paul Stevens with his hand raised.
Paul, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Paul Stevens, 39 Corey Street. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for this opportunity. I don't think you ought to move forward on this until you have a groundwork laid out for all of it. There were some interesting questions raised tonight, and I was going to also raise similar ones in that how far out of this town can people live and be on a board? For example, are we willing to take people from Trenton? Are we willing to take people from New Hope? What are the ground rules for this sort of thing? And what about if there is somebody from Lambertville that wants to be on, but somebody is serving, for a non-resident is serving, who has priority? You know, I think you ought to take this holistic look. I don't think you ought to pass this one off right now. You ought to step back and decide what the guidelines are. And if there are differences, they ought to be well-defined as to why they aren't consistent across all of these committees. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes, Mr. Opel.
the way the ordinance is drafted right now, it's not specific, and I think that's on purpose because if there's supposed to be some kind of residency requirement that restricts who the mayor can nominate and the council can consent to, I think the way it's drafted allows for that process to play out properly, where the mayor can nominate somebody, and if the council thinks that that person can adequately perform as a member of this board based on where they are, then they can vote them down. I think the way it's drafted now allows for a case-by-case review rather than a more specific approach that may, you know, limit the ability to nominate a qualified person.
Thank you, Mr. Opel.
Okay, our next person is Mr. Sean Ellis.
Sean, please state your full name and address into the record, and please proceed with your comment or question.
Hi, I'm Sean Ellis. I live at 204 Brunswick Avenue. I should not have to remind you all, only 3 months after the public outcry and reversal of the appointment of a police officer to the planning board, why it is still not okay for police to be appointed to government bodies that seek public input. But to approve this ordinance that requires a police officer to serve on the Human Rights Council just 2 days after the conviction of Derek Chauvin is astonishingly tone deaf to what's going on in our country and our neighborhoods, and that must be changed. So I'll start by reiterating for everyone the mission of the Human Rights Council. The City of Lambertville Human Rights Council shall promote education regarding living in a diverse community and address any problems of intimidating or violent acts which may be committed because of the group to which citizens may belong or identify with. Given the national spotlight on police misconduct and abuses of power, the appointment of a police officer to the Human Rights Council is itself an intimidating act and contradicts their mission. I've been advocating for restrictions on police powers over the past year, and I still feel intimidated as a white male speaking out publicly on the subject. People of color and undocumented people have a good reason to fear police. And I can only imagine how they might feel about engaging with the current Human Rights Council, the very public body that was created to welcome them and address their concerns. The city ordinance establishing the Human Rights Council states that the national and global recognition of acceptance of people from many diverse backgrounds comes with responsibility. It's your responsibility as city representatives to engage with and reach all our residents. I know it's been difficult to do this, particularly with our Spanish-speaking community. Perhaps the community's reluctance is based on a lack of trust of government and police, but we don't know because we haven't tried having an HRC without police presence. Systemic racism means racist practices that are codified into our laws and ordinances. We're talking about a textbook definition of systemic racism, and you have the power to start and dismantle it today. I urge one of you to make a motion to further amend this ordinance and remove the police composition requirement. And if any of you are still not convinced that we need to change this practice, I would like to ask the mayor to let the council members explain how having police on the Human Rights Council encourages underrepresented communities to participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Taylor, you'd like to speak?
Yes, just realizing that we did not, I thought we were going to try to use the timer again for public comment. We did not do it. So I want to make sure that we're fair to all commenters
You're right.
Yes, so I do have the timer right now. I just haven't done it on the app. We just uploaded it, just became a panelist, but I have been keeping track with my phone. He was 2 minutes and 60 seconds. I can start the timer for the next panelist.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, Sean was very concise, but just want to make sure we are consistent for as many people as possible. We
No
missed
problem.
one.
Okay, our next person is Philomena Hengst.
Philomena, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Hi, this is Philomena Hengst. I live on Vinewood Street in Lambertville. Did you want the full address? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yes.
Okay, 56 Buttonwood Street in Lambertville. Mayor and Council, I commend you for amending the ordinance to expand the access of the Human Rights Council to more participants, including the students of South Hunterton and those without proof of residency. Having served on the HRC, I can tell you that the additional voices of these individuals in particular.
You're blocking your microphone or something. We can't hear.
Oh yeah, I definitely am. Would it be okay to start the timer again, or actually I probably could just, did you hear anything that I said?
Yes, we just heard, we heard most of it, just the last several words we missed.
Okay, so just saying, having served on the HRC, I can tell you the additional voices of these individuals in particular that will be brought into the work will be invaluable. It was also my experience on the HRC during our 6-month focus on safety issues in Lambertville last year that having the lieutenant participate in issues that questioned policing in town was awkward and it was challenging. This conversation is not going away. The national question of whether police make us safer has been raised locally with residents, and the advocacy group in town continues to grow in numbers. Please consider a hiatus in the lieutenant's participation in the HRC, perhaps allowing him to appoint a civilian representative and utilizing the HRC to create a local forum to discuss these issues honestly. This is something that cannot be done with police present. Thank you.
Okay, the next person is Sue Bell.
Sue, please state your full name and address into the record, and please proceed with your comment or question.
Sue Bell, 407 Sergeant Drive. I guess I had a couple of questions. One was, does the HRC require proof of residency? And the other thing is, other than subject matter professionals, why would we have non-residents on, other than school kids? Why would we ever have non-residents on a community task force to make decisions for the community? So I would like someone to comment or comment on what Sean said. So thank you.
No comments? Can we move on to Mr. Larkin?
I'm sorry, one second. I'll make just one brief comment, which is that I think this is worth I think it's worth looking at. There are some places where I can imagine having somebody who does not live in town could be useful, because so much of what we talk about and think about is regional in nature, and sometimes people have subject matter expertise. I think that's the case here. And there are probably some other boards and commissions where it doesn't make sense to allow people who are not residents to sit there. But I mean, I think that's what we addressed earlier, that we will be looking at all of this holistically. And thank you to Councilwoman Lambert for volunteering to lead that charge. So, I'll repeat, I'm comfortable with moving forward with this because it was requested from the sitting council. But I do think we should think about this as a sort of bigger picture issue.
I would just like to say that my understanding as to why this was put forward as was approved at the first reading, we had discussions about this, and I actually brought up a similar issue in terms of, how do we manage the number of non-residents? We have 5 private sector members. What if all of them are outside of the community, et cetera? And to Mr. Opal's comment, we manage that through the individual on a case-by-case basis through individual council approval of each nominee. However, I think Mr. Stevens raises a good point in that, and also Councilman Stegman raised a point about maybe we do want to put some geographic criteria around that, but I'm not sure that we want to do that this evening because that would be out of scope for this. And given the fact that I just agreed to work with the mayor on looking at the nominating process for all of the commissions, maybe that's something we put on a, kind of a parking lot item for, looking at for all across the board.
Just add to, I mean, I think Mr. Opal's advice is good in that it does, there is a, you can set rules that, don't empower you to find enough people to serve those functions. So if we make this too tight, we could find ourselves not having the statutory authority without changing it to be able to fill seats. I think it's a two-part process. One is having reasonable boundaries around service, but also you being able to use our judgment through the naming process and the consent process from the legislative body here. There's a role for both. I'm not gonna. I mean, if there's somebody in town who's really good and we have volunteers, I am certainly give them preference over somebody in West Amwell or California or wherever. But if we have a body, we have an outstanding candidate and we have nobody in town to be able to fill that, flexibility to be able to provide that through a voting process without having to go back and change our rules, I think is appropriate. I just want to note a couple other from some of the other comments too. Some of these that when we go into this process, and I'm happy to help out to mayor as well. Some of this is statutory in origin. So like the planning board is statutorily defined in terms of categories. I tried to go on quickly because of some of the concerns I heard about the Human Rights Council to look at other cities to see how, many don't have a Human Rights Council. I say probably most don't, but some that do have very different compositions. So I think again, I think it's a fantastic idea and timely, especially based on some of the concerns that have been raised, to take a holistic view of all of our boards and commissions and figure out, do we have the right process? I'd also like to make sure that we're not having folks serve, if they have a designated seat and they no longer serve that representational capacity because, I don't know, they don't work for the city anymore or whatever. The exit process, I think it should be important too. And I think that was the council's point is like, what do we have to renominate somebody? So I think that exit process should be part of this as well. I think a big view of and look at this, hear from the members of the community, and look at what recrafting is necessary is timely. I do plan to vote for this. I don't want to stall the work of this commission because we can't have somebody serve. This is on second reading now. We can't do a substantive change, but I do think we could roll up our sleeves, in the near term here to try to take a look at this and again look at it holistically.
Councilman Sanders, I agree with you. I also would like to circle back to Mr. Ellis's and Ms. Hank's comments about the role of the police on the Human Rights Council. And I would think that's something that the mayor and I could be looking at. I don't think that it's useful to try to incorporate it into tonight's work for the reasons already mentioned, but I think it's an important topic. And I actually would like to hear more from the Human Rights Council as a whole. I guess we got this ordinance tonight, I think was presented to us via the Human Rights Council. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And they must have a process. And I would like to see them, I would like to see that process leveraged for changes, recommendations for changes such as those being suggested tonight with police participation.
I think it's important too that we
just like I'm happy to work on that with you, Councilwoman Lambert, like Councilman Sanders mentioned here. You know, some of this is statutory, some of this was built into purpose. You know, while I'm happy to work with the Human Rights Commission on other alternate changes they'd like to make to their appointments through that process, you know, I think it is important that we have members of our community and members of our staff directly integrated into important decision-making and outreach bodies. And so there may be some disagreement, you know, from members of the public and where, you know, my administration stands on having, you know, access and support. So we shall see. I'm happy to continue to work on it with you though. And I appreciate you volunteering for it. Can we move to the next comment?
Yes. Matt, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Hello, everybody. This is Matt Larkin. I live at 406 Sergeant Drive. So my first comment is going to be about the discussion here about the HRC Commission and the presence of the police. I like the presence of the police. I think I definitely hear the arguments about maybe there might be intimidation. I think in Lambertville, we're really lucky that I don't think we have that issue with our police. And so I think we need to figure out how to make that even more useful to the community. I have nothing but great things to say about our police officers. And so I think that it is a difficult conversation, and maybe I'd rather hear that the conversation is more about how do we have difficult conversations as a community, and, you know, work things out, you know, try some different things that way. But I really think it's important that we incorporate the police in all of these, because I think that's really going to bring change. If there is change needed for the way that our police interact with all the citizens of Lambertville. So the second part is, you've been talking a little bit in general about how these committees are staffed. So I am on the Board of Trustees for the library, which I love. So thank you for allowing me to be there. And Councilman Sanders is right. The library in particular has these certain rules, some of which are a little bit unfortunate. They require citizenship, not just residency. So, and the other thing I'd like to say to council members Lambert and the mayor is talk to the different heads of these committees, you know, as you start to think about this, because ultimately the way it really works is, or hopefully it should work, is that the committee heads think about some people. They hear, you know, probably someone tells you, hey, I'm going to be resigning at the end of this year. So, but just include them in your discussions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Larkin.
Lori, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Can you hear me? Great. Lori Howe, 213 North Main Street. In regards to the HRC in general and the police, I do want to say that I support the police as part of the conversation. I appreciate that they want to be a part of the conversations and finding solutions, and building bridges versus continuing to separate and set and create a tone for fear and vilification. You're not going to get anywhere if you don't start somewhere. And the police that we have in this town, thank God, are great people, and they try really hard. So I feel fine about that. I feel it's also a bit stereotyping. Maybe that's not a strong enough word to continue to place national events on our community, and the people that are in it that are just trying to do the right thing. So I'm good for that. My concern with the non-residents on our committees is pretty obvious. it concerns me that you would have non-residents making decisions or part of making decisions for our community when you have SMEs, subject matter experts. I've been on committees. You can have speakers come, you can have them present to your committee. They don't have to be residents. They can be from anywhere, actually, as long as they are a subject matter expert and the committee wants to see them. So to me, it doesn't really, it's not necessary. It doesn't feel necessary to me to have non-residents on to be subject matter experts. So I really feel also that there is a lack of parameters around that too. I think we all can agree with that. We're not, we want to pass something without actually knowing what the parameters are for that. And you know, we've argued that before with other things. So I just would like to, I'd like to know more about what those rules and parameters would be before you guys would go through with that, because it'll be really hard afterwards to, you know, to make changes or things of sort at that point. Anywho, thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Ms. Howe. Tina, did we already hear from Carrie Brown?
We did not. She is actually next.
Okay.
Kari, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
And we need to restart the timer.
Yes.
Carrie Brown, 58 Buttonwood Street. I would just like to strongly express my opposition to the appointment of the police to the Human Rights Council. I'm shocked actually that this is even on the table. And I just want to say, I don't think that this is about a specific police person in general. I've heard that a few times, but just an overarching systemic problem that's way more far reaching than that. I think it's inequitable to have this as a part of a human rights council. And, you know, I as a white person am uncomfortable with this and can't imagine how someone of color might feel. So that's all. Thank you for listening.
Matthew, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Matthew Hanson, 105 Douglas Street. I just wanted to echo Sean Ellis's comments and agree with them. I think we have a Human Rights Council, which is great. And as Councilman Sanders stated, many towns may not have a Human Rights Council, but we do. So we are a leader and we should lead in every aspect of that Human Rights Council. So I think that's a good opportunity for us to think about that and how we can lead now at this moment. The police in Lambertville are wonderful. I had an interaction with them recently and they're great. But I think in the Human Rights Council aspect, this is an opportunity for us to take a step back and really look at how that involves them. So just wanted to say that. Thank you.
May I comment, Mayor, quickly? Just want to remind everybody that we are not appointing anybody tonight. We are changing the composition. I understand that may sound like I'm splitting hairs, but we've agreed that we're going to review the composition of all of our boards and commissions in a systematic way. No change is being made to the presence of the police tonight. Just want to make sure everybody understands that the timing, I can understand the timing and the emotions and sensitivities around it, but I think, I don't have a strong opinion yet on this question. I can kind of see both sides here, but I welcome the opportunity to work on this with my colleagues and with members of the community, many of whom I've been having ongoing conversations with. So, let's just be clear about what exactly is happening here tonight.
Lee, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Hello. I just wanted to echo Sean and Philomena's comments. I wanted to add that having police presence on the Human Rights Council will probably also hurt its effectiveness. People who distrust or are intimidated by police probably won't engage with the council, and therefore the feedback that the council collects will be skewed. These people that feel intimidated are probably the most vulnerable in our community, and those are the people that this council should be trying to get feedback from. As Sean said, the council's purpose is to support the diversity of the community and make sure everyone feels safe and welcome here. I also just wanted to address some thoughts that I'd heard from other commentators talking about how nice Lambertville's police are. You know, I don't think that's really the issue here. You know, I'm sure many of them are nice, but the fact is that they enforce and uphold a system that overall oppresses Black people. And on the point of, you know, having to have these difficult conversations on a town-wide scale, I totally agree with that. I think that's super important. But having the police presence there, as I said, is a barrier to many people. And it's not just a difficult conversation for people who have been intimidated by the police or have experienced harassment by the police. This difficult conversation for, you know, me or as us as white people, for others, it's trauma. And even the act of having to speak to a police officer on the council could be traumatic. So that's why I don't think it's appropriate to have police on the council. Thank you.
For our record, could you please give us your address?
Right. I live in Stockton, 4 Bridge Street.
Thank you.
Two quick comments, Mayor, if I could. First, just going back to the residency issue, the notion of somebody serving who doesn't live here. I mean, it's, you know, I'd point to like the planning board, which is a statutorily derived composition, and the class 2 is somebody who's an official of the municipality, which is often someone who lives outside of the city. So even the statutorily required ones, you know, we will, by necessity in many cases, have to have some folks who live outside the city. The legislature in New Jersey contemplated that kind of participation and thought that their input was important. You know, folks are raising this you know, the point about the participation of the police, and you know, I think that this is again part of what we should be listening to and getting input from a wide range of folks. I do think we'd be crazy not to have the police input on various issues affecting the city, as to whether they sit as a member or not, you know, is something that I think we should, again, you know, should we have the library sit on that? Should we have, you know, whomever? I think the Human Rights Council was, Cindy or Steve may remember, but it's probably like 5 or 6 years old, I'm going to guess, and I think the composition dates back that far. But it's I think the promise you've heard is for us to take a look at all of them, and not just start to ad hoc take a look at things. We got this recommendation. I think we should move forward to approve this, but I think we should take a look at all the representation.
Thank you, Councilman.
Judy, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Yes, this is Judy Gleason, 86 North Union Street, and I'm sort of trying to get my arms around all of the various points that have been made, many of which I agree with. I think the biggest question that caused me to even say anything is it seems as though there's a little bit of a rush on this. I get that it's second reading, but is there any reason why it has to be done tonight? Is there something that's pressing that can't happen unless this happens tonight? Because several people, including members of council, have noted that there are things that should be looked at. There is input that should be sought. There's conversations that should be had. And I don't think I understand what the rush is to get this through tonight. I think there was a suggestion of an amendment early on in this discussion, and the point was made that, well, that would be substantial, so we'd have to start all over, and gosh, oh gee. I don't understand the rush, so that's my first thing. My second thing is, I think the concept of the police contribution may be very different from the police sitting as a member with voting ability, which obviously needs to be thought about, and obviously there needs to be input on, but it's not a yes or no on one. It sort of is an involvement issue, and I think I've probably covered sort of generally all the points that came to mind as this discussion was going on. But the biggest one for me was, why are we in such a hurry on this if there are so many points that so many people are concerned about?
I can take a stab at this. The Human Rights Council has been requesting this amendment to this ordinance, to their founding ordinance since November of last year. They have taken on a much larger role this year in terms of how we're tackling big issues in our community, and taking a leadership role in outreach and activity amongst our community members and in the region. And because of that, they are looking for an expanded board to help, specifically with members of the South Hunterdon Regional School District, which requires this change in order for those volunteers to sit on this board and have a vote, which they feel is important. So we have not rushed this. We thought about it critically. We asked them to make recommended edits to their ordinance. They provided those recommended edits. We read it into first reading. We had a robust discussion about it, and we're having a robust discussion now. I think we've addressed the secondary point about talking about a larger scope of looking at our foundational ordinances for other committees, commissions, and boards, but that does not have to do specifically with this ordinance. The rushes that they've requested that we do it, we've done our due diligence on it, and it's time to take a vote.
I don't think I'm allowed to say more, so I will just accept that, although I don't think I'm allowed to say more.
Councilman Lambert?
I just want to say, Judy, I don't see how this ordinance in and of itself, this amendment would preclude any of the other things that we're doing. It's part of a process. It's a bigger process. This is one piece of the process. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, who knows, maybe in looking at this, holistically across all the commissions and boards, we may come back and tweak this, right? I don't know. It's a potential. But I think it's just one small step in a process. And I don't feel like it's being rushed for the reasons that the mayor provided. This came from the Human Rights Council. They gave it some thought. They crafted a request, and it's kind of gone through a process. And I think that by doing this, we don't eliminate the opportunity to do other things. That's all.
Okay,
thank you.
Next comment.
Susan, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
My name is Susan Rebello, and I live at 8 Hillside Court in Lambertville. And I just want to make it really clear that I have a lot of respect for the police, and I feel that they have a very, very difficult job. I am really all for the police and the community having a positive relationship. I think that's really good. But I do have a concern about police on this diversity board, because, one thing that is that the police have, if they see or aware of unlawful activity, they have a responsibility to act in their capacity as law enforcement personnel. And so I think that that is something that could be intimidating and could be kind of a negative influence on maybe people speaking their minds. And we do know that we can't kind of deny that we have vulnerable populations who are not, populations who are not here legally, for example, and that it could diminish their involvement, in the community. And it could really have an impact, a negative impact on the diversity committee's work. So because of the actual role of a police officer and because of their duties that they have and that they really have to uphold, I don't think it's really appropriate for them to sit on a board like this, even though I think they can be very helpful in other ways. So that's really all I wanted to say. And I also want to thank all of you for your hard work and consideration. And I realize that things are very complicated and I'm not aware of all of the machinations that go into when you get to a point like this. And I'm sure it's hard to listen to comments when you've been through like a gazillion steps and people are kind of saying, oh, well, but what about this? So I say that, with all due respect to how hard you work but I just felt like I needed to weigh in on this. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
If I could, Mayor, say just a couple of things. The position of the police director or the officer in charge on the committee, the officer is already on the committee. Am I correct in that assumption? He has a role on the committee.
Correct.
So the conversation is going, and it's great to have the conversation, is should a police officer remain on the committee? And I think that's what it's not about appointing one, it's about the concept of having one. And that is a great conversation to have, and I welcome the input from the public. I certainly would like to, I'm glad that Ben is going to be working with the mayor, going through all the committees that look for volunteers and the process that's currently taking and the parameters in which it continues. So what we're doing tonight is part of the ordinance is to allow a student from South Hunterdon Regional High School to sit on the Human Rights Commission. That is one part of the ordinance, correct?
Correct.
The second part of the ordinance is to remove the residency requirement for this panel, just for this commission. The commission came to us. They wanted the flexibility to bring somebody from the outside in. And the person who has been spoken about tonight already sits on the commission. It's about making his seat permanent, given the fact that this individual has moved out of Lambertville. So that's the scope of this specific ordinance. On a broader scale, as it's been brought up by many people tonight, and it's great to hear input. That's a discussion that I don't think we're going to be able to come to a conclusion tonight. Definitely the conversation will continue. I'd love to be part of that conversation. But what's in front of us tonight is just two things. And I think that that's the focus of why we're talking about this specific ordinance. It doesn't preclude us for talking about, in general, about the role of the police on the commission as well. So I just wanted to clear to ask the questions to clear that up. That's really before us tonight. We're not voting to put a police officer on the commission.
Thank you, Councilman. Yes, I think that's been
Just wanted
clarified.
to,
That's been clarified multiple times. I appreciate you sort of putting a fine point on it. So can I get a motion to close public session for this ordinance?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
there were no
Aye.
hands up, correct, Mayor?
Uh,
I see one just went up actually.
It was after we closed public session. It's up to you whether or not we want to reopen public session to hear this comment.
Yes, let's do that.
I think we should,
so.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ben, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Hi, this is Ben West. I live at 48 Coriel Street. I think it's so great we're having this conversation tonight. The perspective I wanted to offer is just as a resident who attended every Human Rights Council meeting starting in June of 2020 through the end of the year, some of which ran up to 3 hours long. And I attended and participated, and I really commend this move to add a position, to have a student on it. I think that's going to be a huge change for the better. And one of the reasons I felt it was important to participate and attend all of these is because it seemed that the Human Rights Council was a place where we could really try to address the issues going on in our community and in the country involving the what I think is a human rights crisis involving policing in this country. And I have to say that I was, voicing, my strong opinion that I think that Lambertville needs to look at the role of policing in Lambertville. And I was heard out at those meetings, and I was given an opportunity to speak about that. And I know that the council was then asked to make recommendations. The Human Rights Council was then asked to report back with recommendations about policing going forward, and that the council will soon vote on a budget for the police going forward. And what I want to say about that is that it just seems to me that having the head of the police as a voting member on that council affected the deliberations and conversations that I saw over those many, many hours in some subtle and some other not so subtle ways. And it seems to me that that is a space where if we want to be able to have free discussion about these issues, that it really doesn't make sense to have the head of the police in that role there. I mean, the Human Rights Council should be for people who don't have a lot of access to the levers of government and power here in our town. If there were not a law enforcement representative on that council, it doesn't mean that they wouldn't have plenty of ability to express their viewpoint and give their input and do all sorts of things in many capacities. But it seems to me that from my experience of being there, that it really shaded the conversation in certain ways. And I think that it affected the overall recommendations that ended up getting made out of the council to city council and to the mayor, which I think are going to be relied upon, and we'll hear them relied upon when there's a vote on the budget. So it's problematic, and I think that we should really seriously consider making a change here.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing on this agenda item?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Cindy, do we need to read the ordinance title into the record?
So the last motion was to close, or was it a vote
No,
on?
the last motion was to close the public session. So now we need a motion. Do we need to read the title in?
No, we just need a motion to adopt ordinance number 6.
Can I get a motion to adopt ordinance number 6?
So moved.
Councilman Stegman for the first.
Second.
Councilwoman Lambert for the second. Can I get a roll call vote?
Councilwoman Lambert,
Yes.
Councilman Sanders,
Yes.
Councilman Stegman,
Yes.
Council President Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Fall.
Yes,
Would you like me to handle the rest, Mayor?
please.
Okay, so ordinance number 8 and 9 are going to be carried to the May 20th meeting to give the planning board the sufficient time that they need to review and make a recommendation. So we'll now move on to ordinance number 11, and I'll read that into the record. It is a bond ordinance providing for the acquisition of property known as 260 North Main Street and related site improvements in and by the city of Lambertville in the county of Hunterdon, New Jersey, appropriating $3,770,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $3,770,000 in bonds or notes of the city to finance part of the cost thereof. Now we have, I'll open the public hearing on this, on ordinance number 11, and ask for council comments.
My only comment would be that we use the timer consistently.
Okay.
Great.
So,
Okay.
Councilman, you just mean to start the timer at the beginning of each person's statement?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, Tina, are we ready?
Yes. Judy, please state your full name and address into the record. Then please proceed with your comment or question. Judy, please unmute yourself.
Tina, you have to start the timer.
Yes, I usually just start it as soon as they start talking.
Got it. Okay.
Judy, you're muted. Oh, there you go. Nope, you're muted.
She's muted to go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, because my screen says mute, so crazy me. But anyway, Judy Gleason, 86 North Union Street. I just have one question about this. And that question is, can there be assurance that none of the improvements that are incorporated in the discussion in section, I think it's section 3, would in any way negatively affect our ability to get preservation funds from any of the organizations that may be talked to or may be in the process of talking to the city? In other words, we wouldn't do anything that would inadvertently or not cause it to be not possible for one of these preservation organizations to give us money because we have done something that deviates from their position on preservation.
Yes, I can assure you that the city is working diligently with a host of state and county preservation, both historic and land preservation organizations, including the New Jersey Conservation Foundation, the Hunterdon County Historic Land Trust, the Hunterdon County Land Trust, the State Historic Land Trust, the State Historic Preservation Commission, the State Historic Preservation Office, Green Acres. We've also worked with the Division of Local Government Services, all in order to ensure that we are pushing this these improvements to get as much state refund or state incentive support as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Lori, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Lori Howe, 213 North Main Street. I just want to provide my support for the purchase. I also feel thankful that some money had been put aside also for maintenance or to be used in the future. It's really hard again to get a bunch of money and then go back and ask for some more money later. And I do appreciate the thoughtfulness in that. I really, really feel strongly that the city needs to be the decision makers in this land for on the land for all the reasons that we've said in the prior meetings and the meetings, the meeting tonight. So that's all I'm going to say. Short and sweet. Thank you very much. Go, go, go.
Matthew, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Good evening, Matthew Hansen, 105 Douglas Street. I was just wondering what the plan for the city is to maintain, as we have multiple buildings in the city that we're trying to maintain, what the plan is to maintain the building on the Clausen property where the city police were going to go. If they're not going to go there, what is our plan to maintain that building or use that building now?
There has been no plan made. We agreed as a body in the last meeting that we would do a full site. We made a commitment to each other and to the public that we would do a full site plan. That work will be done in public and with public comment. And so we are going to do that work as soon as we've acquired the property.
Okay, so just to clarify, we're buying another building. We can't maintain our current ones, and hopefully we can maintain this one. We'll make a plan or something, I guess.
I'm sorry, was that a question?
No, a statement, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Sue Bell, 407 Surgeon Drive. I have two questions. One's a follow-up on the mayor's comment that you've been pursuing funding. What kind of commitments do you have to date and what kind of money? And then my next question is the bondless road improvements. Does that include commercial parking lots and commercial lighting, or what kind of road improvements are in the bond?
So each of the state organizations that we're working with have their own separate process. Each of those processes take an incredible amount of due diligence. So we're working with Green Acres on a refund, for instance, that requires a whole process. We're working with conservation organizations in the state to help us through that process. We won't get a specific commitment on the amount of money until that's actually a legislative act. So that will be much, much later this year. We did get a commitment from the chair of Green Acres, Martha Sapp. I'm sorry, the director of Green Acres, Martha Sapp, that she's committed to this project, and she actually turned that letter into the state for our Division of Local Government Services LFB project. So too did we got direct support from the New Jersey Conservation Foundation, the Hunterdon Land Trust, and from the Historic Land Trust, the State Historic Land Trust. So each of those organizations have written letters to the state agreeing that they think that this is this preservation project is a priority for the state. It's a priority for their organizations, and that they're going to be working with us over the next year to several years to ensure that we get as much grant money as possible for this project.
So you got letters of support from them, not commitments of funding.
They will not give us commitments of funding until we've gone through each of their funding rounds.
So the second part of my question is, you talked about road improvements. My concern is the parking lots being installed and what that does with water runoff, since it's a steep slope.
All of the improvements that were recommended, including an expansion of the road, lighting for safety, all included stormwater management as a part of that. We know that this hill, we are working to straddle the line between maintaining the historic view shed, which is the number one most important thing that we're trying to do with this project, and also maintaining and building out infrastructure for this hillside for years to come. And so
we'll be adding commercial lighting, so people understand that you're adding commercial lighting.
We haven't finalized, like I told Mr. Hansen, we haven't finalized a plan yet, but because of the expansion of the road and the need for public access, my expectation is, yes, we will be adding lighting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Megan, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question. Megan, please unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. My name is Megan Ruff. I live at 65 South Main Street. I am the chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission. I've also been a member for close to 10 years. I just really feel that it's imperative that we don't lose access to a passive recreation space in the city of Lambertville, especially one that really serves as a major entrance to the city. The space has the ability to serve as really a community hub, continue the sledding tradition, and so much more. To lose access to this would be detrimental to the character of our community. As I mentioned during the first reading, it's really necessary that we have the foresight to not only fund this project, but fund the maintenance. There are instances where we have purchased property with no ability to maintain them appropriately, such as the hill behind Ely Field and Cherry Street. As a chair commission member and member for the past couple of years, it's always been one of our most difficult pieces is to find funding and try and move forward. So I really feel that, you know, we need to be thoughtful about this process. And I feel that City Council has done so by committing to spend funds on site plans and start to plan appropriately for the future use of the space. So by accessing the full amount of funds, not only for the purchase, but also for planning is really important. So I just wanted to say that, and that's it.
Thank you, Megan. And I just want to thank you for all of your service and your help on this project. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Madeline, please state your full name and address into the record, and then please proceed with your comment or question.
Cherry Street. I just wanted to, again, express my strong support. I think it's really exciting that you all have a chance to vote on this on Earth Day, actually. So I'm really happy to see that. I think the plans and the process that you all have followed are really, really great. So appreciate the work and fully support this. Excited to see it happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Janine, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Hi, I'm Janine McGregor, 161 Swan Street. I'm a CAT member, but I am speaking here for myself. Again, thank you guys for all the hard work you do. Thank the Clausens for working with you guys on this opportunity. I just want to say, if we don't purchase this land, it'll be lost forever and it'll be developed quickly. A lot of people are rightly concerned and they're bringing things up like lights and parking lots, but you know, I think with the city owning it is really the only way we're going to have any control over that. If it is sold, if it's developed, I feel the city will have very little control over what is built there. And it's no, slight against the city. It's just the way things are. It will be sold to whomever. They will develop it kind of however they want. The reason I'm saying this is because let me put it this way. Like, I have this scenario in my head where someone comes in and says, a builder comes in and says he wants to put in 50 units and 10 of them are affordable housing. And we're at a public meeting and there's a ton of outcry against this. But I don't know if the city can say no. If the city doesn't grant approval, aren't we vulnerable to a builder's remedy lawsuit, which would cost us more money and end up probably losing that open space anyway? And maybe you can answer that when I'm done, but I just ask this because it's sort of like a cautionary tale for those people who think we will have control over what's built. You guys may be familiar with this unsightly foundation that I always complain about that has lied dormant and overgrown for over 10 years going up the hills in between Swan Street and 518. I'm sure council members Lambert and Stegman know what I'm talking about as they live up the hill like me. This development had very strong public opposition because there were steep slope issues, there was a stream behind it, there was a ton of other issues, but it was approved anyway. And at the time, I was told by a board member, we have to give them approval. The only way we can prevent it is if the city purchased it and it was preserved as open space. It's kind of where we are today. I think we need to purchase the Clausen property so it won't be developed and more importantly, won't be lost. We need to be realistic though. The town can't stay exactly the same as it is. We all love Lambertville, but it won't stay exactly the same as it is. It'll change over time. The place you see and love now wasn't this way 50 years ago. It wasn't this way 30 years ago when I moved here. I think it's going to change more in the future and it should change, but let's preserve what we can, which is that little bit of open space, that last parcel of open space. So I ask you to please move forward with this acquisition.
Thank you, Janine.
Thank you.
Susan, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
My name is Susan Ravello, and I live at 8 Hillside Court in Lambertville. And I just want to say that I am totally in favor of the purchase of this property. I am also very much in favor of the bond to be able to have the money, to take care of it. And I really appreciate the council's efforts to acquire other public funding, for this project from the organizations that you mentioned. I just think it's really important. I think we need to maintain control over it. And I also think it can be something really positive for a community and for the community and a place for us to come together. And I so appreciate all of the work, that has gone into this. So just want to say I'm so in favor of it, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Susan. Our next commenter.
Shara, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Hi, this is Shara Durkee. I live at 53 Delaware Avenue, and I don't have much to add that either Megan or Janine or some of the other speakers said already, but I just want to say how important I think it is to purchase the Clausen property. I think we can't afford to lose it in terms of the history of Lambertville and the beauty of Lambertville and the future of Lambertville. We need to hang on to this, keep the space, keep the beauty, and keep it as something that our community altogether can use and enjoy. So I fully support the purchase of the Clausen property. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we get our next comment?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Mary, it's okay. Mary, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question. Mary, please unmute yourself.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I wasn't used to Mary. It's Mary Jane, but that's okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I guess I'm just going to really reiterate what I said the last time we had this discussion, and I'm in agreement with so much of what's been said. It's interesting that Maddie said that about Earth Day, and I was thinking about that today, that it's pretty significant. I have found in talking to people, there's a huge consensus, and the last vote really reflected the will of a pretty considerable majority of residents. So I am in awe and gratitude for all the work and that's gone into this. Grateful to the Clausen family, and just so happy that we're going to continue to move forward to preserve this really special and beloved property in town. So thank you so much.
Thank you. If there are no more comments, can I get a motion to close the public hearing on, Cindy, are we on ordinance 11?
Yes, ordinance 11.
I do see one more hand up.
Okay.
Matt, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Hello, this is Matt Larkin at 406 Sergeant Drive. I want to thank the council and all the work you've done on this property. I fully support the acquisition of the property, and I fully support including funding to maintain the different parts of the property. I know Councilman Stegman said that I think a lot of the money is going towards the barn initially. And the other thing I want to point out is that, again, I'm great that it's tax neutral. So we've already allocated and agreed to pay for open space taxes. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity for the city. I really ask that the council show leadership on this and purchase this property and hold it for people whom we haven't even met and who may not even use it until after we're gone. And that will be the legacy that we create for Lambertville and its future residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no, would you like to take it?
I'm sorry, Cindy, go ahead.
Would you like me to take over? Yeah, okay. Can we have a motion to close the public hearing on ordinance number 11, 2021?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Great. Can we have a motion to adopt on second reading, granting final approval?
So moved.
Yep. Second.
Councilwoman Lambert?
For the reasons I mentioned at March 25th, first reading of the original ordinance, I remain concerned about the lack of a referendum and our precarious financial circumstances, so I vote no.
Councilman Sanders?
Yes.
Councilman Stegman?
I'm going to vote yes, and I'd like to thank the council and the mayor for honing in on what the purpose of this particular bond has become. I think it says a lot about the commitment that we all have to this property, to protect it going forward, to stop overdevelopment, to control the future of this property. And I look forward to working with mayor and council and everybody who's out there right now and wants to put forward ideas. There'll come a time when that will be not only most welcome, but as citizens of Lambertville, your input about how this property gets used going forward is what I look forward to hearing about. So as I said before, I think I vote yes on this.
Council President Taylor?
Yes.
Mayor Fall?
Yes, and I do want to take a second to recognize over the last several weeks as we work towards our local finance board waiver, as well as several other hiccups during this process. Our staff and volunteers rose to the occasion here, and specifically Council President Taylor, as well as Cindy and several of our volunteers, including many members of the CAT, members of Lambertville Goes Wild, just general members of our community who cared about this process, spent hundreds of hours in the last 4 weeks to make this possible. And, I have said from the beginning of my time as mayor that Lambertville runs on volunteers. And particularly with this process, that was never more clear. This has been a very difficult and long 6 months of due diligence, but I really appreciate everyone's thoughtfulness as we worked towards, I think, what is the best solution for the Clausen property to ensure that stays and remains a historic jewel in our community, that we stop overdevelopment, which was a major campaign issue in 2020, and that we also ensure that we are creating new recreational space for our community and investing the right way in it. So I want to thank everybody on this council for considering this. I want to thank everybody in our community who showed up to the innumerable hours of meetings on this particular issue, who answered surveys, who reached out to our council members. And finally, I want to thank a couple of the folks who really pushed us over the line. You guys know who you are, and you're all on this call. I really appreciate everybody's volunteerism to make this happen. This is a very special moment for Lambertville. The last thing I'll say before I'll shut up is that Deb and Ed Clausen forsook quite a bit more money and a lot of unknown public and emotional toll in order to give the city the time that it needed to consider this publicly and to do this the right way by having public hearings, doing these open public questions, by giving us time to do the deep dive into the environmental side, into the use of the property. And it gave us the opportunity to, like I said, to really attack this the right way, in a transparent way, with constant communication to members of our community. I'm really proud of that process, but it wouldn't have been possible without Deb and Ed's commitment. This is, I think, the best possible win-win situation wherein Deb and Ed get to retire. We get to maintain the Clausen legacy, which is one of historic and rural preservation in our community. And we get this incredible new space to shepherd into the next generation. So thank you to Deb and Ed. Thank you to everybody who volunteered to make this happen. I really appreciate everybody's work.
And thank you to you for your hours of dedication and for your leadership on this.
Thank you, Cindy, but no thank you necessary on that. So let's, I think that's our last agenda item.
Just have the announcements, and it's just, we did have a meeting on community aggregation. We did record it, and you can find that through our website. Street sweepers started back up on Monday, so please remember to move your car. And just a note that districts 3 and 4, the polling place has been changed to the American Legion. So just want to make sure that people are aware of that. Other than that, Mayor, we do have another segment of public comment that we have to follow up with.
Great, let's do it.
Currently, there are no hands raised. So now we have 2.
Okay. Brian, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Brian McNone. I'm at 18 Highland. I had a question that was actually a follow-up to the last planning board meeting when there was some discussion of a possible meeting between, I believe it was the city and Suez, about the possibility of bringing water in relation to the subdivision at 9 Douglas that was proposed. I'm just curious if there's any updates on that situation or when we might expect updates.
Yeah, so we've been working with the applicant's counsel and our construction official, as well as Cindy, to coordinate a public hearing or a public meeting rather with Suez. So we are trying to coordinate that, and you will, everyone within 200 feet of that property will be hearing from the city and Suez with a meeting date on that. But it is in the works.
Okay, thank you. And you think that'll be relatively soon, or?
Yeah, I think relatively soon, like not tomorrow, but likely before like we swing into serious summer.
Okay, thank you.
Just a note on that meeting, Mayor, if I'm not sure how far 200 feet gets, but I think it's probably of interest to more folks in that community. So if there's a way to, if it's open to a broader range of folks and we can notice it, I think that'd be a good idea.
Everybody, we're asking the applicant to reach out to the 200-foot radius, but we'll be sending an email in the weekly Lambertville Matters, like we do for all of our.
Good.
Okay, Matt, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Hi, everybody. Matt Larkin again, 406 Sergeant Drive. Very quickly, I just want to thank you guys for the approval that of the ordinance or whatever it was, where you expanded the membership of the Human Rights Council. I'm on the library board. We asked you to expand our board last year, and I want to tell you, it really, really helps to get a couple more people on there. So, and I sat on the HRC as a library rep for a few months. There's other conversations about who should be on, who shouldn't, but having extra people on these boards really helps make things happen. We're seeing it now in the library. So I just want to say thank you for supporting the boards. That's all. Thank you.
Kyle, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Hi, my name is Crail Funch, and I'm technically a resident of New Hope, but my heart is in Lambertville. And I've just been watching all of these meetings, and I really appreciate all the time that you've all been putting into it. And I just love the property and so glad that this decision has been made. So I appreciate all of your time and opinions and all of this. So thank you very much. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Matthew, please state your full name and address into the record, then please proceed with your comment or question.
Matt Hansen, 105 Douglas Street. I'm speaking as Matt Hansen, president of New Hope Celebrates. I just want to remind everyone that May 8th kicks off our community LGBTQ plus month. We're not having a parade, unfortunately, this year or a fair, but we are doing many events to celebrate the LGBTQ plus community. And we encourage all residents and businesses to fly their flags or banners or signs to celebrate our LGBTQ plus community. So that kicks off on May 8th, and thank you so much.
Okay, we have no more hands raised. So with that, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Have a good night.
Thanks,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody. Thank you.
Feel better,
Good night.
man.
Thanks.